What would you do if your husband humiliated you in front of the men working for you without knowing you were their boss? I sat quietly at the far end of the long mahogany table, my fingers loosely wrapped around a crystal wine glass. Laughter bounced off the chandeliered ceilings, echoing through the dining hall like a performance I'd watched too many times before. But to me, it was just static background noise to a room full of men who thought they knew power. Grant, my husband, raised his glass high, his voice booming over the chatter like he owned the air itself. "Well, here's to another month of what should we call it, sweetheart creative unemployment," he said with a smirk, locking eyes with me. The men around him, senior executives in finely pressed suits, burst into laughter. One nearly choked on his scotch. Grant leaned back, satisfied with himself. "Maybe you should apply as a receptionist somewhere, Madeline. A little desk job would suit you nicely." More laughter, sharper this time, like glass breaking in my chest. I lowered my gaze, careful to hide the flicker of a smile tugging at the corner of my lips. Let them laugh. Let them think they held all the cards. They had no idea. My name is Madeline Carter. To the world, I'm just a woman living in the shadow of her powerful husband. No title, no job, no legacy of her own. Just a trophy wife with expensive taste and too much time on her hands. That's what they see. What they don't see, what they never saw, is that I am the founder and CEO of Carter Technologies, the very company these men brag about running. The empire they think they built was born from my blood, my grit, my relentless vision. Tonight they see me as small, weak. But tomorrow they'll remember my name, and the world they think belongs to them, I'm about to take it back. He thought I was nothing, because I let him. When I first met Grant Carter, he was magnetic, ambitious, charming in that effortless all-American way that made you want to believe every word he said. And for a while, I did. I let myself believe that he loved me for who I was not, what I had. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that by the time we met, I had already laid the foundation for Carter Technologies. It wasn't a household name then. Just a whisper of an idea fueled by late nights, black coffee, and a fire that refused to go out. I lived small on purpose, rented a modest apartment, drove a beat-up hatchback, wore department store clothes. I told Grant I was a freelance financial consultant. Said I was struggling to find traction in my career. He never questioned it. In those early years, Grant was different, supportive, encouraging. He told me not to give up, that I was brilliant, that my time would come. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe us. So I married him. But something changed. It always does, doesn't it? As he climbed the ranks, first at a small consulting firm, then at Carter Technologies, his tone shifted. The patience faded. The encouragement turned into condescension, the affection into criticism. "You have a degree, don't you? Why not put it to use? You're too smart to just sit around mads. I work 12 hours a day. The least you could do is look interested." Subtle at first, then bolder. He stopped introducing me as his wife and started calling me his better half at home, at least. His friends laughed. I smiled, because I needed to know what he'd become when he thought I had nothing to offer. What Grant never realized was that every promotion he received at Carter Technologies, every glowing review, every raise I had signed off on them. He strutted around the office like a king, sipped overpriced coffee in meetings I funded, made decisions in boardrooms I had designed. He built his identity around a company he didn't know I created, and I stayed silent, because I needed to see how far he'd go when he thought the woman beside him was beneath him. The further he rose, the more entitled he became. He started staying out later, took solo trips under the guise of strategy retreats. At parties, he laughed louder, especially when the joke was on me. Madeline still searching for her passion, he once told a room full of my own employees, "I say she should start with a hobby that pays." The words stung. Of course they did. But I didn't cry. I didn't lash out. I took notes. I started collecting breadcrumbs, throwaway comments he made at home, late-night phone calls with his network whispers of deals that sounded a little too slick to be clean. I wasn't angry. I was focused, because I wasn't going to just leave him. I was going to expose him, and I wasn't going to do it alone. To take them down, I had to become no one. The day I became Emily Reese, I left everything behind my wardrobe, my name, my voice. I was no longer the wife of Grant Carter, no longer the shadow of a CEO. I was just another woman applying for a job I had already created. It started with a fake resume. Simple, unimpressive. A year of unemployment. A few entry-level jobs that didn't work out. A community college business certificate, just enough to make me seem forgettable. That's what I needed to be for now. I walked into the Carter Technologies building through the front doors, not the private executive elevator I'd once used. The lobby smelled of espresso and ambition, familiar but foreign now. I clutched a thin black folder, took a deep breath, and stepped into the unknown territory of my own creation. The receptionist didn't recognize me. Neither did the elevator guy. Neither did security. Good. The interview room was tucked away on the 7th floor behind a pane of frosted glass and a too-bright overhead light. I waited in a stiff plastic chair while 3 men shuffled inside. I knew all of them Grant's inner circle. Men I had once promoted, men who thought they ruled Carter Technologies. They didn't recognize me. Why would they, Emily Reese, one of them said, without looking up? I nodded. Let's start with this. How long have you been out of work? His tone was flat mechanical, like I was wasting his time. A little over a year, I answered soft and careful. I've been trying to find the right opportunity. Another man leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. You think this is it? We get hundreds of applications from people far more qualified. The third one didn't even pretend to care. He scrolled through his phone, smirking. I caught a glimpse of the screen. A message to Grant. Your wife's look-alike just walked in. Hope she doesn't cry. They were mocking me. Again. Only this time, they thought I was someone else. For the next 15 minutes, they made a sport of it, questioning my resume like it was a joke, tossing out phrases like, maybe aim lower and you're probably more admin material. They never once asked about my skills. They never once saw me. They thought I was nothing. I left the room with hunched shoulders and bowed head exactly as expected, but inside, I was burning, because I had just confirmed what I needed to know. The rot wasn't just Grant, it was his entire ecosystem. This wasn't just personal anymore, it was structural. They had built a culture around ego, cruelty, and silence, and I wasn't going to expose it with a press release. I was going to dismantle it, piece by piece. Over the next few weeks, I stayed undercover. Emily joined team meetings, sat through humiliating feedback sessions, and listened closely in elevators, hallways, and break rooms. I watched talented women get dismissed. I watched engineers get mocked. I watched promotions handed out like party favors to the loudest voices in the room, not the smartest. That's when I knew it was time. I made the call to my private team. We were going deeper. They thought I was done. They didn't know I was just getting started. By the time I took off the Emily Reese name badge for the last time, I wasn't just furious, I was armed. Over the next 12 months, my private team and I worked in the shadows, tracing everything Grant and his circle had touched. My lead investigator was a former federal compliance officer. My cybersecurity expert once tracked down insider trading rings across Silicon Valley. These weren't hobbyists, they were experts. Every week brought new layers of rot shell companies funneling money out of Carter Technologies. Fake vendor contracts routed through Grant's college buddy in Miami. Lavish vacations in Bali and St. Bart's billed as business development. Emails, voice memos, internal, Slack messages, some damning, some disgusting. What struck me most wasn't the volume of it all. It was how casual they were. These weren't criminal masterminds. They were men drunk on power, so sure of their invincibility that they didn't even try to cover their tracks. But it wasn't just financial, it was cultural decay. I found messages where junior staff were bullied for speaking up, emails mocking a brilliant engineer for not smiling enough, screenshots of women's LinkedIn photos shared in group chats with sleazy comments underneath. It was a boys' club, a toxic, rotting boys' club. One night, buried in an archived HR file from 3 years earlier, I found her name Naomi Brooks. She was a rising star in software engineering, a technical genius, the kind of person who should have been leading teams. Instead, she had been pushed out after refusing to attend a mandatory team-building retreat that was nothing more than a weekend of golf whiskey and executive egos. I remembered her. She had applied for a promotion once. Grant told me she wasn't a good culture fit. I found her current contact info and reached out with a short message, Naomi. I know what they did, and I want to fix it. Can we talk? She didn't respond at first, but 2 days later, my phone rang. There was a long silence on the line before she finally said, I didn't think anyone cared anymore. I did, and I still do. Naomi became my inside voice, the one who helped me understand how the corruption infected every level, how real talent was buried, how fear ruled, how innovation was suffocated by politics. Together we pieced together a blueprint of what Carter Technologies had become, and more importantly, what it could be again. But before we could rebuild, we had to take it down. The timing had to be flawless, the evidence had to be irrefutable, and the fall had to be public. So we waited. We watched. We refined every file, every folder, every timeline. Grant still came home every night bragging about the empire he thought he controlled. Still called me sweetheart with that fake smile. Still made little jokes about how I should try yoga or something since you've got the free time. I smiled. I nodded. But inside, I was holding the detonator, and the countdown had already begun. The boardroom was filled with suits, smiles, and self-importance, until I walked in. It was a Thursday morning, clear skies, light breeze, the kind of day where the world feels quiet before the storm. I didn't take the back elevator. I didn't wear my disguise. I walked straight through the glass doors of Carter Technologies like I had every right to because I did. This time no name badge, no fake resume, no hunched shoulders, just me. Madeline Carter, founder, CEO, architect of everything these men had built their egos on. Some employees glanced up as I passed. A few gave polite nods, others just looked past me. They didn't know yet, but they would. I took the executive elevator to the 28th floor. The boardroom doors were open. Voices buzzed from inside Grant and his inner circle chuckling about some closed-door deal, oblivious to what was about to happen. I stepped in, and the room stopped breathing. Grant's voice cracked mid-sentence as his eyes landed on me. Confusion danced across his face. Mads. What are you doing here? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked to the head of the table, the seat he usually took, and I sat down, calm, collected, certain. Good morning, I said, placing a thick black folder in front of me. Before we begin, I'd like to reintroduce myself. I reached for the remote. My name is Madeline Carter. I am the founder and chief executive officer of Carter Technologies. A gasp rippled through the room. One man choked on his coffee. Another dropped his pen. Grant's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked around the room, searching for backup. He found none. No? He whispered, his voice shaking. This is some kind of joke, right? I clicked the remote. The wall behind me came alive with light. Slide after slide filled the screen: emails, wire transfers, private messages, receipts, surveillance footage, payments to non-existent vendors, corporate funds used for personal travel, data leaks sold to competitors, offensive messages exchanged between executives. It was all there. For the past 2 years, I said clearly, I've been documenting every act of corruption, every abuse of power, every dollar stolen from this company and its people. No one spoke. No one could. Grant stood up suddenly, his fists clenched. You can't do this. I'm the vice president. You were. I cut in, my voice sharper than steel. Until 5 minutes ago. I pulled a stack of papers from my folder and slid them across the table. Termination notices, signed, sealed, delivered. Effective immediately. You and everyone named on those pages are fired. You will be escorted out. Your access has already been revoked. Right on cue, security entered the room. 2 men in black suits stepped behind Grant and his cronies. Calm, silent, unshakable. Grant's face went pale. "You think you can erase me?" he hissed. "You need me. This is my company, too." I stood, and for the first time in years, I let him see the truth in my eyes. "No, Grant, this company was never yours. It was mine before you stepped through the door, and it will be mine long after you're gone." The silence that followed was deafening. One by one, the men who had mocked me underestimated me, built their careers off. My silence were escorted out. Some didn't make eye contact. Others looked like they wanted to speak, but what could they say? They never even knew who they were working for. And Grant. Grant looked back one last time, eyes hollow, lips tight, the weight of his fall just beginning to settle in. He was no longer the golden boy, no longer the king of someone else's empire. He was just a man who'd played the wrong game with the wrong woman and lost. The empire was reclaimed, but the real work was just beginning. The day Grant and his inner circle were escorted out, a strange silence settled over Carter Technologies. Not the kind of silence that follows disaster, the kind that precedes rebirth. For the first time in years, the halls weren't thick with intimidation or empty bravado. People whispered at first, unsure of what had just happened, unsure of what came next. But word spread fast, and soon the truth was impossible to ignore. The woman they had seen as the VP's wife, the one who had smiled politely and stayed in the background, was actually the founder, the architect, the power behind it all. Me, Madeline Carter. And I wasn't done. My first order of business was an internal audit of leadership. Every executive who had enabled Grant, whether through silence or cowardice, was let go. No exceptions, no favoritism. If you protected corruption, you had no place in my company. But I didn't just burn the old foundation. I rebuilt it. I reached out to former employees who'd been sidelined or driven out. I made personal calls, wrote handwritten letters. I didn't offer jobs, I offered justice. One of the first to return was Naomi Brooks. When I called her and asked her to come back, not just as an engineer but as head of innovation, she went silent for nearly a full minute. "You really want me?" she asked. After everything they said, Naomi, I told her, because of everything they said. Watching her walk through the glass doors again, her shoulders squared, her eyes sharp. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. She wasn't the only one. Designers, analysts, programmers, people who had been ignored or undermined, they were the ones I called first. They came back not out of obligation, but because they still believed in what we once stood for. We rewrote the policies. We created anonymous reporting systems. We held leadership accountable, really accountable. I started a mentorship initiative for women and underrepresented voices. We hosted monthly open forums. We launched new leadership training, rooted in empathy, not hierarchy. For the first time, Carter Technologies wasn't just a company, it was a community. I'll never forget the moment it all hit me late one night, maybe a month after the purge. I was walking past the break room and there they were, Naomi and her new team, brainstorming over whiteboards, laughing, arguing, building. No fear, no tension, just ideas. And I realized, this is what we were always meant to be. The press had a field day with Grant's fall, the empire that betrayed its queen. CEO wife reveals she was the CEO all along, from boardroom to sales floor. The fall of Grant Carter's social media went wild. People dissected every detail, speculated about what I knew when I knew it. Some whispered that Grant had married me just to get ahead. Others said he always resented the idea of a woman having more power than him. I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. All I knew was this Grant now worked part-time at a small electronics chain on the outskirts of Austin. Word had it, he wore a red polo shirt and avoided eye contact with customers. A man who once commanded boardrooms, now stuck resetting shelves in aisle 7. People asked me if I felt satisfied. Honestly, that was never the goal. I didn't expose Grant for revenge. I did it for justice. For the people who deserved better. For the dream I'd almost let rot. 6 months later, I stood by my office window watching the lights of the city flicker across the skyline. Inside, Carter Technologies buzzed with life. Teams stayed late because they wanted to. New projects thrived. Investors returned. We had just closed a deal with a major European software firm, our biggest to date. Naomi's AI team had developed a groundbreaking product that was drawing global attention. But what stayed with me wasn't the headlines. It was the way our people walked now, heads held high, smiles that reached the eyes. No fear, just focus. Late at night, when I was alone with my thoughts, I sometimes remembered the woman I used to be, the one who smiled politely at that dinner table while her husband mocked her, who sipped wine and swallowed her pride just to protect the illusion of peace. That woman, she's gone. And good riddance. I had reclaimed more than a company. I had reclaimed myself. I had proven something not just to them, but to every woman who's ever been told to be quiet, to play small, to sit pretty. We are more than enough, and we're not asking for a seat at the table anymore. We're building the damn table. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who claimed to love you or watched someone mistake your silence for weakness? Share your story below and don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep fighting for your voice. Someone's listening.